Welcome to Tent Talk, the podcast with Nancy McCready, where we talk about life under the big tent of God's presence and the provoking process of discipleship. Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tent Talk. This is Nancy McCready. I'm so glad on this episode to continue sharing with you about the inner discipline of solitude and how silence and solitude go hand in hand. That we want to be those who can be alone and be with others and see the great benefit of both. Take a listen, share with others. It would be a great time for you to give Tent Talk a 5-star review and make sure that you are sharing Tent Talk with others. Thanks so much. Enjoy. In this episode, I want to continue reading out of Celebration of Discipline as we are looking at the importance of solitude, that this is not the same as loneliness. There's a difference between loneliness and being alone, and that we want to understand that solitude can happen in the busyness of life, but it is cultivated when you are able to maybe draw away from that busyness so that you can cultivate the solitude within and then be able, with increasing measure and calmness and forthrightness, be able to step into any situation. So I want to continue reading out of this section on solitude. Diedrich Bonhoeffer, in Life Together, titled one of his chapters, The Day Together, and the following chapter, The Day Alone. Both are essential for spiritual success. He writes, "Let him who cannot be alone beware of community. Let him who is not in community beware of being alone. Each by itself has profound pitfalls and perils. One who wants fellowship without solitude plunges into the void of words and feelings, and one who seeks solitude without fellowship perishes in the abyss of vanity, self-infatuation, and despair. Therefore, we must seek out the recreating stillness of solitude if we want to be with others meaningfully. We must seek the fellowship and accountability of others if we want to be alone safely. We must cultivate both if we are to live in obedience." So I got to back up now. I've got to make a couple of comments on this because I love the book Life Together by Diedrich Bonhoeffer. I love the first and second chapter, and he's referring to life together, he mentions, or the day together, and then in here. So the way that I have it in my copy of the book is that the title of the chapter is The Day with Others, which is actually chapter 2. So it's chapter 1 that I love. Sometimes I have books, I just love the first chapter and the 7th chapter, right? Those are the ones that speak most to me. And then, because they're pretty long chapters, and then chapter 3 is called The Day Alone. So, of course, I could share so many things from that, but you could get the book yourself, right? But I love this. Let him who cannot be alone beware of community, meaning you're going to misuse it because you can't bear to be alone. So, therefore, we are using, right, community in a way that it wasn't meant to be used. We're not here to scam people, to use people. There are 100 one another scriptures. Love one another, provoke one another, encourage one another, bear one another's burdens, all that. Yes, we have community. Yes, life together, most definitely. But if we cannot be alone, and we cannot cultivate an inward solitude and major abiding dependency upon the Father where our core needs are met, we come into community and we misuse community. And this is why there is so much offense. This is why there are so many manipulations and so many enmeshments and so many inordinate relationships that are out of order. So many things go on in community when community is not being handled as the valuable thing it is. But it says, let him who is not in community be aware or beware of being alone. Because you could be in great danger because you are not in community properly. You are not in community. You are not able to be with others. Therefore, your alone time is you're going to be doing things in private that you might not ought be doing, if I can just say it in that way, right? So these are things that we need to think about. That's why we need time alone. We need to be able to contemplate. We need to be able to think with God in our times of solitude. So we've already talked about, times of reflection, times of concentration and study, right? But then to take all of that and meditate with God when we are in times of solitude causes us to better be able to relate, connect, and to do all those one another scriptures, right? Out of a life of fullness with the Father. So he continues writing in this chapter on solitude. Each by itself has profound pitfalls and perils. One who wants fellowship without solitude plunges into the void of words and feelings, and one who seeks solitude without fellowship perishes in the abyss of vanity, meaning you become so self-absorbed, self-infatuation, and despair. You can become completely hopeless. It says, therefore, we must seek out, now again, I'm repeating, but don't let it bother you. Therefore, we must seek out the recreating stillness of solitude if we want to be with others meaningfully. We must seek the fellowship, and here it says accountability of others. If we want to be alone safely, we must cultivate both if we are to live in obedience. I want to say accountability, my friends, sometimes gets a bad rap. It's like people say, Nancy, I want you to really hold my feet to the fire. I'm like, no, I'm not going to pull you to the fire and hold your feet to the fire. That's not my responsibility. But if you want to prop your feet up and bring your own feet to the fire, you make yourself accountable to me. If that means you want to come and tell me things, you want to come and share your life with me, I'll prop my feet up next to the fire with you. We could have a cappuccino. We could have a great conversation. But accountability, when you make other people have to come and do the work for you, if you want to be accountable, then bring yourself to people and talk to them, right? And yes, there could be a part of that which is, wow, you aren't doing that. Yes, maybe I will make a call and check in on you to see how you are, but I'm not going to do your work for you. So we have to be careful, again, in our togetherness to understand a real maturing accountability of doing life together, if you will. Now, to read solitude and silence, let me read this section also. Without silence, there is no solitude. Though silence sometimes involves the absence of speech, it always involves the act of listening. Simply to refrain from talking without a heart listening to God is not silence. A day filled with noise and voices can be a day of silence, if the noises become for us the echo of the presence of God, if the voices are for us messages and solicitations of God. When we speak of ourselves and are filled with ourselves, we leave silence behind. When we repeat the intimate words of God that He has left within us, our silence remains intact. We must understand the connection between inner solitude and inner silence. They are inseparable. All the masters of the interior life speak of the two in the same breath. For example, The Imitation of Christ, which has been the unchallenged masterpiece of devotional literature for 500 years, has a section titled On the Love of Solitude and Solitude and Silence. Diedrich Bonhoeffer makes the two an inseparable whole in life together, as does Thomas Merton in Thoughts in Solitude. Now, I've not read any of those except for Life Together, so I'm not promoting these others because I don't know them nor their content. I continue reading. In fact, I wrestled for some time trying to decide whether to title this chapter The Discipline of Solitude or The Discipline of Silence. So closely connected are the two in the great devotional literature. Of necessity, therefore, we must come to understand and experience the transforming power of silence if we are to know solitude. There is an old proverb to the effect that all those who open their mouths close their eyes. The purpose of silence and solitude is to be able to see and hear. Control rather than no noise is the key to silence. James saw clearly that the person who could control his tongue is perfect. James 3, 1 through 12. Under the discipline of silence and solitude, we learn when to speak and when to refrain from speaking. The person who views the disciplines as laws will always turn silence into an absurdity. I'll not speak for the next 40 days. This is always a severe temptation to any true disciple who wants to live under silence and solitude. Thomas à Kempis writes, "It is easier to be silent altogether than to speak with moderation." The wise preacher of Ecclesiastes says that there is a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Ecclesiastes 3:7. Control is the key. James' analogies of the rudder and the bridle suggest to us that the tongue guides as well as controls. The tongue guides our course in many ways. If we tell a lie, we are led to telling more lies to cover up the first lie. Soon we are forced to behave in a certain way in order to give credence to the lie. No wonder James declares that the tongue is a fire. James 3:6. The disciplined person is the person who can do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. The mark of a championship basketball team is a team that can score points when they are needed. Most of us can get the ball into the hoop eventually, but we can't do it when it is needed. Likewise, a person who is under the discipline of silence is a person who can say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. Proverbs 25:11 says, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver." If we are silent when we should speak, we are not living in the discipline of silence. If we speak when we should be silent, we again miss the mark. Wow. That's to be led by the Spirit, understanding timing. This is what brings about in maturing is the nuance of all of these things. Because I can't keep all of these things straight, but Holy Spirit can work the life of Christ in me, develop His life and His ways, brings me into powerful agreement with Him, and I can understand that I can see truth and I can know certain things. It doesn't mean it's time for me to speak all of those things, because silence can be golden until it's time to speak, and then silence can become cowardice. So this is where, my friends, we want to be in the secret place with the Father, in your private practice room, because ultimately He's the one that leads all of it. We are in life with Him. We are in abiding oneness with Him. So let's let Him get us in our private practice room so that there can be a symphonic sound of suns crossing the earth. My friends, it is time. It is time. But we want to have our full attention on our conductor, right? Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We want to make sure that we're in tune with them. So I love you all, and I do pray that all of these episodes on the Hidden Symphony of Preparation have been an encouragement to you. They've been instructing to you. They've been eye-opening to you. All right. Love you all. I want to step in here at the end of these episodes to encourage you to look in the show notes, click the link, and be with me on November 15th for the Vault. This is going to follow through with so much of what we've been doing here on these episodes in the Hidden Symphony of Preparation. And I want to encourage you to be with me on Friday, November 15th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. It is going to be, I believe, so timely for where we are in the seasons of life. So, click in the show notes, the link that you'll see for the vault. Love you all.